Okay, we're going to use this mic because we're filming it, filming this process so that other people that can't be here today can watch the video and be trained the same way. Thought I heard someone coming. I'm just going to start off with prayer real quick, all right? Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for today. Thank you so much for opening our hearts to your love, opening our hearts to your ways and your truth. Lord, we come to you humbly. We come to you open to learning more about you and learning more about what your will is for our life, for our time here in Baltimore, and what your will is for the students at Johns Hopkins. God, we celebrate you and the way that you speak into people's lives, no matter what their race or their gender or their background. You speak into all of our lives. And we just thank you so much for what you've done for us. And we ask you today that you begin to equip our hearts in how to help others and how to reach out to others. Lord, I pray that right now you just open our hearts to your word, and whatever distractions there may be about rain or about anything else or the plans of the day, I pray you just wipe them away and we can be solely and purely focused on your word. In Jesus, your name, amen. Okay, so if you have your Bibles with you, I'm going to ask you to open up to Mark 4 and 5. Okay, we're going to dive into this in 1 second. I have a question for you guys that are here. I would like you guys to close your eyes for a second and think back on a time where you went someplace that you just shouldn't have gone. Whether you were a kid or whether you were an adult, is there a time in your life you think back that you were just in a world where you knew you shouldn't be, or a world that you'd never been to before, and that just was a wholly new other experience? Okay, you guys can open your eyes. How many people have some sort of memory or experience like that in the past, where they just, okay. Anything anyone wants to share, just a little story or anything? Okay. Yeah. How? Okay. Oh. Yeah. Absolutely. That's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. I think if we're all honest, we all have a story like that, where we've just found ourselves in a place either by our own active sort of rebellion, or I want to do things my way, or even just sort of out of naivete, where we're just kind of naive to a situation and we just end up in a spot where we just shouldn't have gone and we need help. So here in Mark 4 and 5, we're actually going to hear about a few different people that find themselves in a spot where they just shouldn't have gone, and they shouldn't be. All right? So I'm going to kind of read it for us a little bit, because we're not going to spend too much time in it, but I'm going to go jump around and kind of hit all the points I want to hit. All right, so Mark 4, verse 35 starts with this. It says, "That day, when evening came, Jesus said to his disciples, 'Let us go to the other side.'" He's talking about the Sea of Galilee. He wants to go from where they were in Galilee across the other side of the lake. Okay, I'm going to jump down now to chapter 5, verse 1. He says, they went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. The man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart, broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day, among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran on his knees, and in front of him he shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, do not torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," the man replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send him out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs." I'm going to jump down now to 15. Verse 15, when they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there dressed in his right mind, and they were afraid. These are the people of the area coming to see this now man possessed, now dressed and in his right mind. Those who had seen it told the people that what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. Then the region began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how much he has had mercy on you." So the man went away, began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. Hey. So, we have this situation where Jesus is taking these guys on a little trip. He says there in chapter 4, he says, let's go over to the other side. We already established where that is. It's the Decapolis. It's 10 cities. Okay, it's on the other side of the lake. This is a place that Jews and disciples were not comfortable going. They did not want to go over to this. To them, hearing this, let's go to the other side of the lake, was a pretty big journey for them. This Decapolis, this Gerasene, this is a Gentile country. It's land east of the Jordan River, and it's a land the Roman province, the Roman emperors put in and started building cities kind of to announce their prominence on the Eastern Front. You know, you think back on American history, when we went west in America, we established cities like St. Louis, and on westward to start beginning to establish our presence in these new areas. Same thing for the Romans, but they went east, and they developed the Decapolis, these 10 cities. All right, to boot, when they arrive, the Jews already don't want to go there. They get greeted by a guy who is doing what? What's this guy that they get greeted with immediately? What's he like? He's insane. Yeah, he's got some stuff going on for him, right? He is naked. He is running at them with broken chains, clanging, and cuts all over him. And he's yelling at Jesus to not torture him. Okay? What are the strikes kind of against him in the minds of the disciples? What are they thinking? What would they want to be around a guy like this? What do you guys think? Yeah. First, he's a Gentile, so they wouldn't want to be around him. Okay. Second, he is living among the dead. He's living among the tombs, so he's dirty. Okay. Third, he's possessed, so that's not good either. And then fourth and fifth, he is bloodied and he's naked. All right. So these are all things where the Jewish men at the time would say, like, we don't want any part of who this guy is. Jesus, up to this point in Mark, had been touching and healing many people. You see it in Mark 1, where he touches the man that comes up to him and says, if you are willing, you can make me clean. I just don't know if you're willing. And Jesus says, I am willing, be clean. Then in Mark 2, you get stories like where friends lower a man right in front of Jesus, and he forgives the man's sins, and he heals him. As a paralytic, he heals him, says, get up and rise. Okay, so they've seen Jesus touch and heal people. Okay, When in past, this man with leprosy, the man that's paralyzed, people wouldn't want to touch them because they thought that the dirtiness would transfer to them. Jesus flips the script and says, no, my holiness transfers to them. Okay? So now, fast forward, here we are in the land of the Gentiles, and they see a man coming at them who they wouldn't want to touch with like a 10-foot pole because like he's just way too dirty or way too unclean for their relationship with God. And Jesus, you would expect like this battle of like this demon-possessed man and like Jesus having this great war, but Jesus just stops the man, right? And the demons in him just bow down to Jesus immediately. There's not like a battle back and forth for supremacy. It's just Jesus saying, come out of them. And they're begging him for mercy. Okay? So Jesus has the supreme authority. And Jesus sits here and says, I'm going to clean this man up. Even this man, a Gentile, naked, bloodied, demon-possessed, I will clean him up too. So the Jews, the disciples there, are getting their minds pretty much blown at this moment. Okay? All right. So there's an invitation in righteousness open to all. That's what the Jews learn. They get this new perspective in this moment that Gentiles, demon-possessed people, people living among the dead, people naked and bloodied and cut and in chains, they too can be impacted by Jesus' righteousness. The text is going to talk largely about what these characteristics are, but what we can basically boil it down to is that this man was completely other than what the Jews were. They were just something completely different, right? They were just the complete opposite of who these people were, but still Jesus had compassion for him, still Jesus had intention for him, and still Jesus was able to have authority and give him righteousness, give him a right relationship with God. So that's really, when we're going to boil it down, how it intersects with our lives today. They get this new perspective. In Mark 3, there's a line that Jesus says, the men and women that do the will of God, those are my brothers and sisters. And I feel like in this passage, the disciples, the Jews, who had always probably seen Jesus saying, okay, well, these Jewish men and women, those are going to be my brothers and sisters. And now Jesus is giving them a new perspective, saying, don't forget about these men too. These Gentiles, these people that are other than you. Jesus is saying, my family is going to look pretty diverse. Your brothers and sisters in Christ will be a pretty diverse family. And I feel like that's what's going on here in this passage. Okay, now, here is the point. Here's why we're kind of in this verse, or in this section. Verse 18 of chapter 5 says, Jesus was getting into the boat, and the man who was demon-possessed, now clothed in his right mind, begged Jesus to go with him. Why did Jesus not want to bring the guy with him? What do you guys think? He wanted him to stay where he was as a witness, right? Yeah, he said, this is where you can stay. This is where you can be more effective. Okay? The time of Jesus' interaction with this man was short. It was a very short time of overlap, but the impact was huge. So Jesus is he's walking with 12 guys. He's going to be pouring into them over 3.5 years. Okay, this is still sort of somewhere in the beginning of that ministry. But Jesus has a very short interaction with this man, has an immense impact with this man. Okay, short overlap with this man, immense impact with this man. Okay, and he gets to share with these guys, hey, you are now, Jesus, the name of Jesus is going to be shared in a new land, giving people new perspective on what the God of Israel is all about. Okay? So today, the man the man who is demon possessed, he gets some marching orders from Jesus. So he not only says, hey, you can't come with me, you got to stay here. But what does he tell the man who's demon possessed to now go do in the Decapolis or in his hometown?
here he's learning. And he formerly was not, but
Yes. Yeah. He gives them a message. He says, go just tell them what happened, okay? Go and tell them what you're seeing, what you've experienced. And people can look at this man also and say, I knew this guy, he was this, and now I see him now and he is this, okay? So today, we're here to equip you guys to make a big impact in people's lives who you might not have a very long overlapping time in the same city or community with them. You might not, they might be graduating from Hopkins and on their way out. You don't know the time here, but you can make a big impact in their lives in just a short amount of time. And we're going to talk about that. All right, so the goal here is that we get to help these students. We get to help these students in a physical, an emotional, and a spiritual sense. Now you might say, all right, Brian, like, how do we do that? We're just having conversations with them, okay? So our prayer for you guys today is that what God did for us, all right, when he came into our darkness at our lowest point, how he sent light and provision to us, how he lifted us up and carried us back to where we weren't meant to go. That's Jesus' mission objective. That is our mission here. So the fact is that physically, by engaging in these English conversation partners, you're going to be helping a need to equip them with the understanding and full grasp of an English language, of a new language. I have a student I meet with that's Hispanic, grew up Hispanic. He's an undergrad at Hopkins. And his mom and dad speak fluent Spanish, but he can't speak it. And he can't write it. He can hear it and absorb it, but he can't put it back out. What he needs, though, is practice in just engaging in Spanish. Okay? That's what we get to step into. So there's a physical need you're meeting. All right? There's also an emotional need that we'll talk about today. Emotion, because helping to break down what social barriers will be there for international students come here to America to be around people who are other than them, and us to be around people who are other than us. Okay, and now we get to break down some social barriers. Thirdly, spiritual. Because you get to share your faith. When you get to develop these friendships, you get to say, just pretty much, can I share with you how this man, Jesus, changed my life? And we'll equip you guys today in how to do that. The fact is, I've heard studies with students from Asia, students from India, students from China, students from Taiwan, Korea. They have a very low knowledge of who Jesus is or who God is. You know, unlike us, we grew up going to Sunday school and we had like Noah's Ark pictures in our bedroom as kids and stuff. You know, these students didn't have that growing up. But when they hear about who Jesus is, they have a high response rate. It's something they want to know more about. It's something they want to be involved in. It's something they want to get involved in. That's what the end goal is, to meet three needs: a physical, emotional, and spiritual need, just like Jesus did with this guy in the Decapolis and across the other side of the lake. Okay, we get to step into the same way. My friend Paul is now going to come up and just talk a little bit more about the background and the common traits of who Chinese students are and what we're looking to deal with. Okay? Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Brian. All right. My name is Paul Lin. I'm the minister of the Chinese church also meeting here. So we're hosted by the Church of Christ, but our congregation meet in a Sunday afternoon. But anyway, so much. So in the next few minutes, I'd like to give you some idea about what you're going to run into. I know some of you have been to even live in China for a couple years and know quite a bit about Chinese students. But if my assumption is correct, some of you may say, what am I signing up for? I say, oh, I really know what I'm going to do. So in the next probably 10 minutes, I'll give you some very limited idea about what you're likely to run into. So there's no way I can in 10 minutes do any justice to characterize them. But I will just select some of the points which mostly sound a little bit negative, my fellow countrymen. But it's just the reason is I select those 5 characters. It's just hopefully give you some idea, and when you deal with them, what you should be in your background or your mind, all right? So these are 5 characters I summarize from some of the reports. Some people do research to them. Some are based on my own experience. Oh, by the way, I came to the States as a student 37 years ago, when Jimmy Carter was still the president. How many people, you probably don't remember who he is anyway. So the first one is the anxiety. The anxiety is very common among Chinese students. They are not necessarily start here. They still back way when they're in their own country. That's because Chinese parents, and even they will convey this to their own children. From their birth, they are always like under a lot of pressures to do really well in school. We have a couple of the young people from my congregation. They probably can tell you more. I grew up in that. Some of you probably heard the term called Tiger Mom. Have you heard about it? If you don't, talk to me later or talk to Well, they're under a lot of pressure to succeed in their schooling. And they carry this even coming to the States. All right, they always, and another thing is, the environment in China, in Taiwan, in Far East is typically very, 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 I cannot emphasize enough, competitive. They always try to beat each other. That's their grow-up environment. So they come here, they still have that kind of a mentality. They need to excel. They need to get on top in their class. So the natural consequence, it creates a lot of anxiety in them, especially when they come to this. The students come to the States, especially in the elite school like the Johns Hopkins. They are the cream of the crop. There's no doubt about it. But when you come to this elite school, they face a lot of people just like them, or even beyond them. What they used to can do. So this is success, the desire to succeed, and the other side of the coin is the fear of failure. It just creates a lot of anxiety. So remember that. When you talk to them, you first probably want to be emphatic about there's such a constant mentality, mindset. All right. The second thing is the communication skill. The students from China, from Taiwan, they start learning English in junior high. I heard now it's even in the elementary school. So they learn the language for a long time. They are always prepped for tests. And the students from China had this unbelievable skill of doing well in tests. But that probably stopped there. But when they come to this country, those high test score don't help, don't translate to being able to communicate. I know there's several students, based on my own experience, they have even a hard time to understand what the professor is talking about in the classroom. All right? Most of them have no problem with that, but 9 out of 10, they struggle with verbalize their thoughts, their thinking, even less about their feeling. So they have this problem. And also that when they come to this country, then they're surrounded by the Americans or non-Chinese. Especially on my own experience, the first probably 10, 15 years, when my American friends start talking about jokes, I had no clue what they're talking about because there's a cultural barrier. There are certain things you have to pick it up by living in this environment for a long time. So that's the second trait. That's why we think this initiative, the conversation partner, is based on that, the observation, right? They struggle, but As a result of this struggling with communication, that create a social problems. They have a limited social connections in this country, right? Because they lack of confidence to talk fluently, and they tend to draw back. They say, well, even they are in the States, and as far as I know, and also based on reports, vast majority, they go congregate among themselves. And they live in the Chinese subculture in American society, all right? They even pick their advisor, if they are graduate student, a Chinese professor. And they see, a lot of students have found out, even their labs, 9 or 10 of their colleagues are Chinese. They don't even need to speak English. And they go, once they go back to their dorm or the apartment, they found themselves surrounded by Chinese. All right? Their social life are restricted. That's why we think this program can help them. They have the desire to do that, but they just don't know how, where to go to. All right? Next is about their religion or belief or the lack of. Well, the students from India or even from Taiwan, they bring their own belief system coming to this country, but not the case for China, because from 1949 to the end of the Cultural Revolution, pretty much the government tried to wipe out the religion, even though they didn't succeed. But they did create a vacuum in their belief, because they are an atheistic society. So growing up in this society, you probably can testify that. Last night he was doing the testimony. And there are other students say the same thing. When they have no idea, they have no belief. The only belief is materialism. Or used to be when before probably 20 years ago, they somehow believe in communism. But nowadays it's all gone. And so when you engage them, some of the things we almost like automatically assume they know. You use a certain frames like a writing on the wall. Do you know what writing on the wall means? Do you? No. Even they have been here for several years. But this is a phrase we are so familiar with. You automatically, they understand. No, they don't. They don't. So when you engage them in conversation, you can use that, and also say, you can probably follow. I say, do you know what I mean? All right? That's how you can engage them. All right, so that's the Desert Valley. They probably think about the one in California. So the last point I want to point out, I know that you probably still have a lot of questions, but we can probably, in the Q&A session, you can ask me, and I have Yudu and JHUStudent probably can tell you from their own personal experience. The last point I want to bring up is important, because that is a very, very unique situation with students, especially students from China, because you heard about this one-child policy. Have you? In China for years. So the vast majority of the students, they are the only child in the family. Now, think about this. They grew up with no siblings. And also because the Chinese family tend to have this very inward perspective. They always try to focus on the kids or the single kid. Now you think about it. You are the kid, the only child in the family. The eyes of your parents are on you. They have a high expectation on you. Not only that, they have the grandparents on both sides on you. Wow. You probably can never imagine what it's like It's very common. Probably these two young people can tell you that. What is like that? All right. So they have this tightly-knit family, but of course, China and Taiwan, and now they have a lot of broken family too. But they also have the family. The parents always hovering over their kids, even though they are grown up now. They just keep controlling them. So there's a kind of a tango relationship. You probably don't understand. You don't quite understand that, all right? Because even though many Americans, they somehow not very become less familiar with Bible. But still, the influence is still there, because we know from the Bible that the man should leave their parents and cling with his wife. So we tend to think once they grow up, they should be on their own with their spouse. Not Chinese. Not every Chinese, but a lot of Chinese parents are like that. They have this very tangled relation. They try to control their kids when even they are in the 30s or 40s, in 50s. I know personally some family like that. So there is a tightly-knit but tangled family relationship. And because that, the child and their parents or the grandparents have this very, very tight relationship, but they also create tension and the struggle, the resentment. So they're very typical. There is a love-hate relationship. All right, so they just let you know, not everyone has these things, but you may run into that. So I want to close my observation is this. Because of the lack of, they can't really mingle with the other Americans, but even though they have the desire. But they lack a confidence or lack of a skill or just some of the self-imposed restrictions. But they still wanted to, and they also have this love-hate relations with their family, but that actually create a window of opportunity. If you really show your genuine care for them, after a while, they sense you are really, really, very, very common. I heard Chinese students say, when they first encountered Christian, they are suspicious. They are suspicious. All right, they say, what? There must be something for you. They cannot believe that people can be purely sure, care about you without some expectation return. Right? But after a while, they will figure out. And if you show your genuine care, they sense it, they will be receptive. All right? And another thing, even though they have this kind of a strange family relationship, but they also still very, very care about their parents. So sometimes if you're in a conversation, you show your concern, or you just say, how's your mom? Especially mom, Chinese student, has a very, very tight relationship with the mom, more than their dad. How's your mom? How is she? They may tell you, oh, my mom has this arthritis or the back pain. You can say, oh, how's she doing? All right. So that kind of things that can help you create a window for genuine friendship, and then lead to, when opportunity arises, then show our faith, our Lord with them. So that's why we have this initiative. But of course, there are some other things you should learn that I will pass to Charles. He will tell you how to engage students, especially international students, including Chinese students, and then naturally bring to the sharing of faith. So with that, I will answer your question when the Q&A, and now I pass this baton to Charles. All right.